Okay, let's set the scene. Imagine you're in Venice. It's the 17th century. We're in the heart of the Baroque period. Art and music are just exploding everywhere. It's this incredible time of flourishing. But there's a catch. It's also a world run by some pretty strict rules. And those rules were especially tight if you happen to be a woman with, big creative dreams.
So, I've got a question for you. In this era, totally dominated by men, who do you think published more secular vocal music, that's, non-religious songs, than almost any other composer out there? I'm talking more than most of the guys. Any guesses? The answer is probably not who you're thinking of.
That person was Barbara Strozzi. Seriously, a name that honestly should be right up there with Vivaldi or Monteverdi. But for centuries, she was just kind of forgotten. Well, today, we're gonna fix that.
All right, first up, a Baroque trailblazer. And trailblazer isn't just a fancy word here. We need to start with just how revolutionary this woman was. See, she didn't just play by the 17th century rulebook. She pretty much tore it up and wrote her own. So here's the quick rundown of her life. She's born in Venice in 1619. By the time she's in her teens and 20s, she's already making a name for herself as this amazing singer. But the real game changer, that comes in 1644. That's the year she publishes her first volume of music. And get this, it wasn't just a one-time thing. Over the next 20 years, she dropped 7 more volumes. She built a full-on professional career, something that was just not done by women back then.
To really get what a big deal this was, look at this comparison. On one side, you've got the expected path for a woman in music. Basically, get married, maybe perform at private parties, and hope a wealthy male patron supports you. Then, you've got the Strozzi path. We're talking financial independence, getting public recognition by publishing her own work, and being a total innovator with her sound. She didn't just pick a different road, she had to pave a whole new one herself.
So, the big question is, how did she pull this off? Well, it all started with her voice, which brings us to our next section, the virtuosissima cantatrice. That literally means the most virtuous singer. And for her, this wasn't just some nice compliment. It was everything. It was her whole identity.
Her secret weapon, really, was her upbringing. It was the loophole that made her entire career possible. See, she was the adopted daughter of Giulio Strozzi, a really famous poet and librettist. And he didn't just support her, he actively championed her talent. He even started this exclusive intellectual club, the Accademia degli Unisoni, which was basically a custom-built stage just for her. Think about it. It was a genius move. It let her perform for and get respect from the most important people in Venice, all without breaking the social rules that would have stopped any other woman in her tracks.
And that's where she got the title La Virtuosissima Cantatrice, the most virtuosic singer. This was more than just people saying she was good. It was her brand. It cemented her reputation as a top-tier performer, and that reputation was the launch pad for her entire career as a composer.
And she took all that skill, all that expertise from performing, and poured it right into her compositions, especially into a form called the cantata. So, what's a cantata? Just think of it like a mini opera, or a short, dramatic story told through music. It has these parts that are almost like speaking, mixed with these absolutely gorgeous, soaring melodies. It was a pretty new and exciting thing at the time, and Strozzi was right there on the front lines, helping to shape what it would become. She wasn't just following trends, she was setting them.
Okay, so she's a star singer. That's amazing in itself. But what comes next is what makes her story truly unprecedented. Becoming a professional, published composer, that was a whole different level. Let's actually look at the numbers because they're pretty staggering. 8. That's the number. Over just 20 years, she published 8 full volumes of her own music. Now, to put that in perspective, that would have been a huge deal for any composer back then. But for a woman who was also managing her own career, her own finances, and raising 4 kids on her own without a husband, it's just mind-blowing. And inside those 8 volumes, more than 125 individual pieces. We are not talking about a small collection here. This was a massive, significant body of work that basically carved out her spot in the history of Venetian music. So what was she writing about? Was it all church music? Nope, not even close. Look at this. 7 out of her 8 published collections were secular vocal music. We're talking songs about love, sure, but also about heartbreak, intense longing, even betrayal. Only one single volume was sacred music. This tells you everything. She was a composer focused on raw, real, human emotion. And that focus on emotion brings us right to the sound of her music itself. Because it wasn't just technically perfect, though it was. It was so personal, so emotionally powerful. Her music speaks directly to you.
So, if you hear a piece, how do you know it's Strozzi? Well, there are a few telltale signs. First, it's almost always focused on the solo soprano voice. I mean, that was her instrument, right? Next, listen for the harmonies. They're often really surprising, creating all this tension and drama. Kind of keeps you on the edge of your seat. And finally, you'll hear these incredible vocal runs. They're called melismas. That's where a singer takes just one syllable of a word and stretches it out over this whole cascade of stunning emotional notes. It's her signature.
You can even see her grow as a composer just by looking at a few of her publications. Her first one, Opus 1, was this big, ambitious debut. Then you jump ahead to Opus 5. That's her only sacred collection, where she basically shows everyone, yeah, I can do this too. And then her final work, Opus 8. Wow, it shows she never lost that fire. Critics at the time described it as having a raging tone. Can you imagine? Daring, passionate, and emotionally raw, right up to the very end.
Okay, so she was this important, this prolific. Why isn't she a household name like Vivaldi? It's a fair question, and for a very long time, she simply wasn't. But the good news is, that's finally changing. So let's talk about her legacy and how we're able to hear her voice today.
It's really been a three-step journey to bring her back. First, you have scholars and music historians digging through archives, finding her work, and creating modern versions of the scores so musicians can actually read them. Then, you have performers and record labels who started recording this music, putting it out there for everyone to hear on platforms we all use. And that leads to the final step. Her music is now being performed live in concert halls all over the world. It's back where it belongs. So when you think about Barbra Strozzi, here is the main takeaway. She wasn't just a talented woman who happened to write some music. She was a true trailblazer. She found a way to work around a system designed to keep her out. And she became an independent, professional composer who left a permanent mark on the sound of the Baroque era. And that really leaves us with one final big question, doesn't it? Her incredible story, this brilliant voice that was almost lost to time but is now being heard again, it just makes you wonder, how many other brilliant voices like hers are still out there? Whose music is just sitting silently on a dusty shelf in some archive, just waiting for someone to come along and listen?